Good morning, Colorado. You are listening to the Daily Sun Up. It's a conversation with the Colorado Sun. I'm team editor David Krause. Before we jump into today's conversation, here is a quick message from our sponsor.
Support comes from Credit Union of Colorado, proud to call Colorado home for more than 90 years. They are a local institution with a track record of showing up for the community and putting people first. Credit Union of Colorado. Honestly good. Learn more at honestlygood.org. Set the summer trend. Electrify your lawn equipment and help reduce harmful ground-level ozone in your Front Range community. Learn more at simplestepsbetterair.org. Got leftover paint taking up space? Recycle it with Paint Care. Paint Care makes it simple and easy for households and businesses to recycle their leftover paint responsibly. Drop it off for free at one of more than 200 sites across Colorado. To learn more, visit paintcare.org.
Now, back to the show.
Hi, I'm Justin George, Public Policy Editor at the Colorado Sun, and welcome to the Daily Sun Up podcast. Today I'm joined by Colorado Sun reporter Colleen Slevin to talk about ICE. News involving U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has been particularly active in Colorado the last few weeks as the agency has announced a detention expansion plan, increased enforcement at DIA, and has had to respond to the arrest of one of its contracted detention officers accused of shooting a protester. Colleen has been digging into these topics and, most recently, has been looking into how activists and residents are fighting an ICE detention facility in Glenwood Springs. Colleen, let's start there. A lot of people are not aware that there is actually a holding center up there in Glenwood Springs. Can you talk a little bit about the history of that detention center? Where it came from, how long it's been up there, and what activists and others are doing to fight its existence in recent weeks?
Yeah, actually, a lot of people in Glenwood Springs and the area around there didn't realize this facility was there. It's been approved for over 20 years. Back in 2003, there was a special permit granted so that ICE could have an office, but also a short-term detention center in a shopping center in Glenwood Springs, near a gym, a dentist's office, the Social Security office. And many people for years had no idea, unless they knew someone who got arrested by ICE, they had no idea this was there.
Now there seems to be, as we look into that and into the Glenwood Springs, you've also been covering both ICE and GEO Group, the contracted private prison group that helps run ICE's detention facilities, have sort of talked about reopening the center in Hudson and turning that private prison complex back into an ICE detention center. So one tactic that you've been looking into here is both Glenwood activists and residents and people in Hudson and people across the Front Range who are opposed to ICE enforcement and what they're doing is targeting sort of the towns and municipalities of where these places are located and trying to get them to legally see if they can stop the federal government from operating these centers. Is that what's going on in Glenwood Springs and also Hudson? And can you talk about sort of that tactic and if it's working at all?
There are those similarities between Hudson and Glenwood Springs where you have people who do want to stop the detention centers looking at kind of some of the usually more boring things that local governments do, issue permits for things that follow zoning rules or making exceptions for things that don't exactly follow the zoning rules. So there's some similarities there. Glenwood Springs is a case where there is a private landlord who is renting to ICE, which experts say is sort of a middle ground because it's not exactly the federal government doing it directly, but they're doing it through a landlord. And so maybe they see that activists might have, and the city might have some leverage because it's not exactly the federal government doing it that owns the property. And then in Hudson, meanwhile, it's a little bit even more of a mixed bag because you have a former private prison that's owned by a private company that has leased the property to be used by the GEO Group, a contractor that is in turn contracting with the federal government to have a detention center for immigration detainees. And so the issue between both of these, connecting both of them, is the local land use rules, but also whether or not a local government can have the power to go in and tell the federal government, you have to follow our rules. And because of this involvement of middlemen, basically private contractors, private landlords, some experts do think there could be a case to be made to enforce these rules against the federal government ultimately.
This seems to be kind of, I wouldn't say fairly new, but certainly a spreading sort of strategy that activists are trying, isn't it? For a long time, I think state, local officials have often said there's not a whole lot that we might be able to do with these federal centers, but a lot of residents, activists, and others who are going to these council meetings and they're trying to hold their local officials' feet to the fire. Is that what occurred? And can you talk a little bit about the Hudson meeting and how many people showed up at that a couple weeks ago?
Nationally, yes, it has come up as more of an issue, especially after federal officials say they were looking at using warehouses and converting those into detention centers, which was an issue earlier this year. So that is an area where other places have looked at zoning rules. In Hudson, it was a packed house there at their last town council meeting, the one right after this contract was announced over the immigration detention facility. And there were some speakers that did talk about the permitting and whether or not that could be a kind of a wedge there where they could get some power over what the future holds for that detention center. There were dozens of people there, over 100 people, and it got kind of rowdy at times. And I think it's something we might continue to see at the town council meetings that are going forward.
Also, we've noticed maybe people across the nation has seen sort of the viral video of a woman being detained by ICE officers at DIA. Is there an uptick in enforcement that's going on at local airports across the nation, or is this happening at DIA? What can you tell us about that incident?
In that incident, was one of the ones that has captured the nation's attention because it was caught on video of a woman from Oakland who was arrested and has since been freed. Her lawyer says she shouldn't have been arrested because she's not, she has a case pending to remain in the United States. But lawyers in Denver and elsewhere do say they are seeing some more arrests of people at airports, people who are maybe on expired visas or have some issue with their visas expiring and then they're trying to get permission to stay. That seems to be what has been at least anecdotally increasing that specific group of people, which they say are not people who are likely to be deported, so they shouldn't be being arrested.
Finally, let's talk about the mid-July shooting outside the Aurora Immigration Detention Center. Aurora police say GEO Group employee Brandon Booth opened fire on two demonstrators after a verbal dispute, injuring one of them. Police say the two demonstrators were yelling at Booth and other employees who were attempting to enter the facility to go to work. Police say the pair of demonstrators got into an argument with Booth before they walked away and were shot. What have you learned since?
Yeah, well, we haven't learned too much more yet, but we do know since then that the employee, Brandon Booth, has been, he's no longer working at the GEO Group, obviously. I guess it should be obvious because he's behind bars, now charged with a crime. He's charged with first-degree assault and attempted first-degree assault. We learned just a little bit about GEO's policies on guns. Even before the shooting, they say their employees are not allowed to be armed in the facility. That is standard in detention centers. We could learn more too about more of the details about what happened next week when Booth is scheduled to be in court for a preliminary hearing, and that's when prosecutors have to present their evidence to show that the case against him should proceed.
Colleen, thank you so much. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Want to again thank Colorado Sun reporter Colleen Slevin for her time. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Daily Sun Up podcast series. I'm Justin George. To read more of Colleen's ICE coverage and other stories, go to coloradosun.com.
Thanks for listening, and finally, here are a few stories that you should know about today.
Colorado has a new wolf conservation manager following the retirement of an official who ushered in the state's controversial wolf reintroduction program. Colorado Parks and Wildlife picked Matthew Hyde to succeed Eric Odell, who stepped down last week after leading the 3-year-old program through numerous challenges, including the deaths of more than a dozen transplanted wolves. National Democrats now think there's a possibility they could flip all 4 of the Colorado congressional districts held by Republicans this November. That includes Colorado's 3rd and 4th congressional districts, held by U.S. Representatives Jeff Hurd and Lauren Boebert. Those districts previously appeared unwinnable for Democrats. 9 counties in the Northern Front Range are on pace to fail federal air quality standards, risking fresh government sanctions. If the Environmental Protection Agency determines Colorado has exceeded ozone limits, the agency could impose new rules and even restrict the sales of certain paints and household cleaners.
To read these stories and much more, visit our website, coloradosun.com. As an award-winning nonprofit news outlet, we take our mission of credible, independent journalism seriously, and you can check out our trust indicators at coloradosun.com/ethics. Our music is by the Denver-based Matt Skellinger Group. A link to their music is in our show notes, and a special thanks to Swallow Hill Music. I'm David Krause. See you next time.